First contact at Nova Academy. The crystalline spires of Nova Galactic Sports Academy pierced the violet sky of Centauri Prime, their transparent surfaces refracting light from 3 distant suns. Within the Academy's central administrative chamber, Director Varric studied a holographic display with all 6 of his compound eyes, mandibles clicking in barely concealed skepticism. A human. Here. His exoskeleton shifted colors, displaying patterns of disbelief. Surely there must be some error in the application process. Administrator Lethna, her bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with measured patience, brought up another holographic window. Maya Chen's test results are quite remarkable, Director. Even accounting for Earth's lower gravity, her performance metrics. Lower gravity is precisely my concern. Varric interrupted, his carapace now showing patterns of academic authority. How can we possibly accept a student from a species that evolved in such primitive conditions? The Nova Games are approaching, and we cannot risk our institution's reputation on an experiment. The door chimed, and both administrators turned as Maya Chen entered the chamber. She moved with a fluid grace that seemed to defy the Academy's 1.8 standard gravity setting, her athletic frame wrapped in the traditional silver and blue uniform of a first-year student. Dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and her eyes held a quiet confidence that made Varric's threat receptors tingle. Director Varric, Administrator Lethna. Maya bowed slightly, the gesture precise and respectful. Thank you for accepting my application. Varric's mandibles clicked rapidly. Yes, well, about that. There are certain concerns about human physiological limitations. Perhaps one of the regional academies would be more appropriate for your species' current evolutionary stage. Maya's smile didn't waver. With respect, Director, I've reviewed the Academy's performance requirements extensively. I believe you'll find humans are full of surprises. Before Varric could respond, a commotion erupted in the corridor outside. A group of students rushed past, their various appendages and locomotion methods creating a cacophony of movement. Administrator Lethna's tendrils flickered with concern. The gravity generators in Training Chamber 3 are malfunctioning, she announced, reading from a rapid update feed. The emergency systems are failing to compensate. Through the chamber's transparent walls, they could see students evacuating the massive training dome. Inside, equipment and smaller objects began to float as the gravity fluctuated wildly between crushing force and 0G. There are still students trapped inside. Lethna's tendrils pulsed with alarm. The safety barriers have engaged, and emergency response units are 12 minutes out. Maya was already moving. Those students don't have 12 minutes. Director, I assume the maintenance access tunnels run under the training chambers. Varric's carapace flickered with surprise. How did you? Yes, but you can't possibly. Then I'm going in. Maya's voice held no room for argument. Humans may be from a primitive gravity well, Director, but that means we've learned to excel in all conditions. Sometimes limitations breed innovation. Before either administrator could object, Maya had accessed the maintenance hatch and disappeared into the tunnel network. Through the transparent walls, they watched as she emerged into the training chamber, navigating the chaotic gravity fields with impossible precision. 3 students were trapped in the chamber's upper level, a crystalline Petrovan youth, partially phased into a support beam, a meridian with its flight membranes tangled in equipment, and a young Aquilan whose gravity-nullifying organs had failed under the stress. Maya's movements were a masterclass in adaptation. When gravity increased, she used it to build momentum. Her muscles, evolved under Earth's constant pull, handling the strain effortlessly. In 0G sections, she moved with the practiced grace of someone who had trained extensively for space operations. Impossible, Varric whispered, his threat receptors now registering something entirely different. Awe. They watched as Maya reached the Petrovan first, using precise vibration patterns, something that shouldn't have been in any public database about their species, to help them phase fully back into normal space. The meridian was next. Maya's fingers demonstrating surprising dexterity as she untangled delicate flight membranes without causing further damage. The aquilon proved the most challenging, caught in a pocket of fluctuating gravity that made approach difficult. Maya studied the pattern for precisely 3 seconds, then launched herself through the chaos. She moved like water finding its level, adapting to each gravity shift as if she could predict it, reaching the stunned student just as the gravity began to spike again. Using her own body as a shield, Maya absorbed the worst of the gravitational stress, her muscles trembling but holding as she guided all 3 students to the emergency exit. Only when they were safely through did she allow herself to show any sign of strain. The entire rescue had taken less than 4 minutes. Later, in the medical bay, Director Varix found Maya allowing the medical staff to examine her, more out of their professional curiosity than any actual need for treatment. Her readings were already returning to normal, her body adapting to the strain in ways that the Academy's xenobiologists were struggling to quantify. Those were impressive calculations, Varix said, his carapace now showing patterns of respectful reassessment. The gravity fluctuations followed a complex quantum probability curve. Even our most advanced students would have needed significant computational assistance to navigate them. Maya's smile held a hint of mischief. Sometimes the best calculations aren't calculations at all, Director. Humans have something we call muscle memory. Our bodies learn patterns on a level deeper than conscious thought. Years of training in variable gravity environments become instinct. Years of training. Lethna's tendrils pulsed with curiosity. But Earth only achieved gravity manipulation technology recently. True, Maya agreed. But we've been training in variable gravity conditions for centuries. We call it swimming. Water provides its own form of variable resistance, and every movement must be calculated against constantly changing pressures and flows. In a way, Earth's primitive conditions forced us to master the fundamentals that your technology now replicates. Varix's carapace shifted to show patterns of academic interest. Perhaps we have been too quick to dismiss the educational value of evolution under constant gravitational stress. Your species' adaptability is remarkable. That's the thing about humans, Director. Maya stood, her movements already showing no sign of her recent exertion. We're at our best when faced with limitations. They force us to innovate, to adapt, to overcome. Every constraint becomes a lesson, every challenge an opportunity to evolve. Welcome to Nova Academy, Student Chen, Varix said formally, his carapace now displaying the complex patterns of official acceptance. I believe you will have much to teach us about the true nature of physical adaptation. As Maya left the medical bay, students whispered and pointed, their various sensory organs tracking her movement. But now their attention held something new: respect, curiosity, and maybe even a touch of fear. The human girl who had mastered chaos walked among them, and the Nova Games were approaching. The Academy would never be the same. Hidden strengths. News of the training chamber incident spread through Nova Academy like a quantum wave, impossible to contain or predict. Maya Chen found herself the subject of intense scrutiny, though not all of it was friendly. As she entered the advanced training dome for her first official session, the whispers followed her like shadow. Watch this, she's probably exhausted her species' limited adaptability already, came a crystalline voice from above. Anx Terra, the Academy's reigning champion in variable gravity competitions, hung suspended in a low-gravity field, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns of subtle mockery. Maya adjusted her training suit's sensors and began her warm-up routine, deliberately keeping her movements just slightly under optimal efficiency. She'd learned long ago that being underestimated was often the greatest advantage. You know, a melodious voice interrupted her routine. Your bio readings don't match your performance. Maya turned to find herself face-to-face with Zinra, a Meridian graduate student whose wing membranes shimmered with the iridescent patterns of scientific curiosity. Unlike most of the other advanced students, Zinra's interest seemed genuine rather than competitive. Bio readings can be misleading, Maya replied carefully, continuing her stretches, especially when calibrated for non-human physiology. Zinra's primary eyes narrowed while her secondary set tracked Maya's movements with scientific precision. Perhaps you're doing what prey species often do, hiding their true capabilities. Maya paused, meeting all four of Zinra's eyes. Interesting theory. Are humans considered prey where you're from? Not at all. Zinra's wing membranes flickered with amusement. But I studied enough evolutionary biology to recognize adaptive behaviors. You're holding back. Before Maya could respond, the training dome's gravity began to shift. Terra had programmed a particularly challenging sequence, rapid alternations between high and low gravity fields, with random pockets of 0G scattered throughout. Let's see how our primitive friend handles some real training, Terra announced, her crystalline form vibrating with anticipation. Maya felt the first gravity shift and allowed herself a small smile. The sequence was complex, but nothing compared to the chaos of the chamber incident. Still, she maintained her facade of careful competence, moving through the field with deliberate focus rather than the fluid adaptation she was capable of. Impressive, Zinra commented as Maya completed the sequence. You matched the Academy's standard performance metrics exactly, almost too exactly. I aim to meet expectations, Maya replied, hiding her amusement as Terra's crystalline form vibrated with frustration at the lack of failure. Later that evening, when most of the Academy's students had retired to their specialized environmental chambers, Maya made her way to the auxiliary training facility. These smaller chambers were typically used for remedial training, making them perfect for private practice. Or so she thought. I knew it. Zinra's voice came from the shadows as Maya entered her access code. You're training in secret. Maya considered her options. The Meridian researcher had already proven more observant than most. Perhaps it was time for a calculated risk. Would you like to see why? Zinra's wing membranes fluttered with excitement. You trust me with your secrets. I trust you to understand their scientific significance, Maya replied, entering the chamber, and to recognize when sharing that knowledge might be premature. What followed made Zinra question everything she thought she knew about human physiology. Maya moved through gravity fields that should have crushed her, adapted to atmospheric changes that would have suffocated most species, and demonstrated a level of spatial awareness that bordered on precognitive. By the void, Zinra whispered, her membranes shifting through patterns of awe. How is this possible? Maya paused her routine, her breathing controlled despite having just completed movements that would exhaust most advanced students. Humans have something we call muscle memory. Our bodies learn and adapt at a cellular level. Every challenge we overcome becomes part of our physical vocabulary. But the official records of human physical capabilities are accurate for baseline humans in standard conditions, Maya explained. But we're incredibly adaptable. Every limitation we face becomes a puzzle to solve, every constraint a challenge to overcome. It's not about raw strength or natural abilities. It's about understanding and pushing boundaries. Zinra's scientific mindset was clearly racing with implications. The Nova Games, you could revolutionize several events. I could, Maya agreed, but that's not why I'm here. Humans aren't just here to prove we can compete. We're here to show that different evolutionary paths can lead to extraordinary results. Sometimes the species that had to struggle the most ends up with the most interesting solutions. A noise from the corridor interrupted them. Maya quickly reset the chamber settings as Terra's crystalline form appeared in the doorway. Remedial training. Human? Her form vibrated with smug satisfaction. Finally accepting your limitations. Maya smiled, letting just a hint of her hidden strength show through. Something like that. Good night, Champion Terra. I look forward to the Nova Games. As Maya left, Zinra noticed something fascinating. For just a moment, Terra's crystalline form had displayed the subtle refraction patterns of uncertainty. The champion had seen something in Maya's smile, a glimpse of the predator hiding beneath the prey's facade. The Nova Games were approaching, and Maya Chen was rewriting the rules of what was possible, one secret training session at a time. But as she would soon discover, not everyone at the academy was ready to see their understanding of physical limitations challenged by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The real test wouldn't be in proving what humans could do. It would be in helping the galaxy understand why they had learned to do it in the first place. The breaking point. The Nova Academy's grand training complex hummed with energy as students prepared for the upcoming games. Maya Chen had settled into a careful routine, maintaining her facade of steady competence during regular sessions while continuing her true training in secret. But the universe she was about to learn had a way of forcing hidden strengths into the light. It began during a standard multi-environment training session. The chamber was packed with advanced students, including Angstara, whose crystalline form had taken on the sharp edges of frustrated ambition. The champion had spent weeks trying to prove Maya's capabilities were limited, only to watch the human meet every challenge with unwavering consistency. Today's session will test adaptation to extreme environmental shifts, announced senior instructor Xol, his gaseous form swirling with professional authority. We'll be running the stellar survival sequence. Maya noticed Zinra's wing membranes flutter with concern. The Meridian researcher had been watching Maya's public performances with growing fascination, knowing they were merely the surface of her true capabilities. The stellar survival sequence was notorious, a simulation of conditions found near volatile stars. Students would face rapid changes in gravity, radiation, pressure, and temperature, all while completing complex navigation tasks. Even the most advanced athletes typically showed signs of strain. Teams of 3. Kexol continued, his form condensing with emphasis. Champion Angstara, Student Chen, and Junior Champion Vexkar. Vexkar, a quantum shifter whose form existed in multiple probability states simultaneously, rippled with displeasure at being grouped with a human. Angstara's crystalline surface displayed patterns of predatory satisfaction. The chamber transformed around them, environmental barriers creating distinct zones of challenging conditions. The first zone simulated the crushing gravity of a neutron star's edge, the second mimicked the chaotic energy of a solar flare, and the third replicated the complex pressures of an stellar atmosphere. "Begin," Kexol announced, his gaseous form expanding to observe all areas simultaneously. Maya moved through the first zone with careful precision, allowing herself to show just enough strain to match expected human limitations. Ahead of her, Angstara's crystalline form adapted naturally to the intense gravity, while Vexkar simply shifted through probability states where the gravity affected them less. They were halfway through the sequence when disaster struck. A power fluctuation, later discovered to be deliberately triggered, caused the environmental barriers between zones to collapse. Chaotic energy from the solar flare simulation collided with the gravity field, creating a cascading wave of destructive force. Several students were caught in the confluence. Maya saw Zinra's wing membranes begin to crystallize under the extreme conditions, while 2 younger students found their adaptive organs failing. Even Angstara's crystalline form showed signs of stress fractures. In that moment, Maya made her choice. "Everyone brace," she shouted, abandoning her facade of limitation. Her body moved with unleashed precision, decades of human innovation and adaptation flowing through every motion. She reached Zinra first, using her body's momentum to push the Meridian clear of the destructive energy wave. Impossible. Vexkar's probability forms converged in shock as Maya moved through conditions that should have incapacitated any non-evolved species. Maya's muscles burned as she fought against gravitational forces that could collapse a small moon, but she didn't slow down. She reached the younger students next, her movements demonstrating a level of control that made even Kexol's gaseous form condense with astonishment. "The energy wave is destabilizing the chamber's containment field," Zinra called out, her scientific instruments flashing urgent warnings. Maya's mind raced through calculations. The chaotic energy was following patterns similar to solar fluid dynamics, something humans had studied extensively in their quest to harness fusion power. She could see the solution, but it would mean revealing just how much humans had learned about manipulating extreme environments. Tara, Maya called out to the champion, whose crystalline form was vibrating with the effort of maintaining structural integrity. I need your resonance frequency. For a moment, pride warred with survival in Tara's crystalline patterns. Then, sending data now. Maya's movements became a symphony of adaptation. She used Tara's resonance to create interference patterns in the energy wave, her body moving through the chaos with the precise timing of a conductor leading an orchestra of physical forces. Each motion was calculated to redirect and dissipate the destructive energy. When the chamber's emergency systems finally engaged, the gathered students stared in stunned silence at the human who had just rewritten their understanding of physical limitations. How? Tara's voice vibrated with a complex mixture of emotions. Your species evolved in a stable gravity well with minimal environmental challenges. You shouldn't be capable of this level of adaptation. Maya took a moment to catch her breath, no longer hiding the efficient way her body processed the strain. Those limitations are exactly why we learn to adapt. When you evolve in a challenging environment, you develop natural defenses. But when you evolve in a stable one, you learn to create your own solutions. You've been holding back, Kexul observed, his gaseous form showing patterns of keen interest. Why? Because proving humans can compete wasn't enough. Maya explained, helping the shaken student regain their equilibrium. We needed to show why we learned to adapt in the first place. Humans didn't evolve superior bodies. We evolved superior problem solving. Every limitation became an opportunity to innovate. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Maya had demonstrated more than just physical capabilities. She had shown them a fundamentally different approach to overcoming evolutionary constraints. But as the adrenaline faded, Maya noticed something concerning. The power fluctuation that caused the barrier collapse had been too precise, too targeted. Someone at the academy wasn't just skeptical of human capabilities. They were actively afraid of them. The Nova Games were approaching, and Maya had just shown her hand. The question now wasn't whether humans could compete at the highest levels. It was whether the galaxy was ready to accept just how far humanity's drive to overcome limitations had taken them. As she helped with the chamber's cleanup, Maya caught Zinra's multiple eyes and saw understanding there. The real challenges were just beginning, and they had nothing to do with physical capabilities. Evolution of understanding. The aftermath of the training chamber incident rippled through Nova Academy like waves through quantum foam. Maya Chen found herself the center of intense attention, but not the kind she had anticipated. Rather than fear or resentment, many students now approached her with genuine curiosity about human training methods. In the advanced training complex, Maya demonstrated a basic human workout routine to a diverse group of students. Tara observed from nearby, her crystalline form displaying complex patterns of reluctant interest. Your species intentionally stresses your structural integrity to promote adaptation, asked a young quantum shifter, watching Maya complete a set of exercises in variable gravity. We call it progressive overload, Maya explained, maintaining perfect form despite the crushing gravitational forces. The key isn't just pushing limits. It's understanding how and why those limits exist in the first place. Zinra, who had appointed herself as unofficial researcher of human physical capabilities, recorded every detail with obvious fascination. The implications for cross-species training methodology are extraordinary. Humans didn't just adapt to their limitations, they developed systematic methods for exceeding them. But not everyone welcomed this evolution in understanding. Maya noticed subtle signs of resistance among certain faculty members. Training schedules were mysteriously altered, equipment malfunctioned during her sessions, and some advanced facilities became suddenly unavailable for her use. The old guard fears change, Zinra observed one evening as they reviewed data from Maya's latest training session. Your methods challenge thousands of years of established physical education doctrine. Maya nodded, studying a holographic replay of her performance. It's not just about the methods. Humans represent something many species find uncomfortable: the idea that apparent limitations can be turned into advantages. Their discussion was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Next, Tara entered the research lab, her crystalline form vibrating with uncharacteristic uncertainty. The Nova Games begin in 3 cycles, the champion stated, her usual confidence somewhat dimmed. I'd require assistance understanding human adaptation principles. Maya and Zinra exchanged surprised looks. The Academy's reigning champion asking for help was unprecedented. What changed your mind? Maya asked carefully. Tara's form shifted through several complex patterns before settling. During the chamber incident, you didn't just survive extreme conditions. You understood them. Your species lacks our natural advantages. Yet you've developed something perhaps more valuable: the ability to turn understanding into action. Over the next several days, an unusual collaboration formed. Maya began sharing human training principles with a small but growing group of students, while they in turn helped her refine her techniques for different physiologies. The exchange of knowledge flowed both ways, creating new hybrid approaches to physical advancement. Humans have a saying, Maya told her growing circle of training partners. The best teacher is often a student. Every species here has something unique to teach about adaptation. Even Director Varix found himself reevaluating his assumptions. During an observation of one of Maya's training sessions, he watched as she helped a crystalline student understand how to use their natural resonance in new ways. Remarkable, he commented, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. You're not just demonstrating human capabilities, you're showing how different evolutionary approaches can complement each other. But as understanding evolved among some, resistance hardened among others. Maya discovered her personal training data had been accessed without authorization, and rumors began circulating about dangerous human enhancement techniques. The situation came to a head during a preliminary Nova Games qualification event. Maya was demonstrating a new training technique in the zero-gravity chamber when the environmental controls suddenly locked into a deadly configuration, one that suggested intimate knowledge of human physiological limits. Someone's trying to prove a point, Maya observed grimly as she worked to stabilize the chamber systems. They're using exactly enough force to incapacitate a human at our known limits. Zinra's wing membranes flickered with concern. But they don't know your true capabilities. No, Maya agreed, her movements precise despite the challenging conditions. They don't understand that humans' greatest strength isn't our physical adaptability. It's our ability to learn from every challenge. She addressed the gathered students, her voice steady even as she countered the chamber's hostile programming. This is what humans do best. We take problems designed to break us and turn them into opportunities to grow. Every limitation becomes a lesson, every barrier a chance to innovate. Working together, Maya and her diverse group of training partners transformed the sabotage training session into a masterclass in cross-species cooperation. Each student contributed their unique evolutionary advantages, creating solutions that no single species could have developed alone. As they finally stabilized the chamber, Director Varix made an announcement that sent ripples through the Academy. The Nova Games will feature a new event this year, adaptive cooperation. Teams of mixed species working together to overcome environmental challenges. Maya caught Tara's eye, seeing in the champion's crystalline patterns a new understanding. The upcoming games wouldn't just be about individual achievement. They would demonstrate how different evolutionary paths could combine to create something greater than the sum of their parts. But as Maya reviewed the chamber's sabotage data with Zinra later, they found evidence of a deeper concern. Someone at the Academy wasn't just resistant to human methods. They seemed desperate to prove that humanity's approach to evolution itself was a threat. The Nova Games were no longer just about athletic competition. They had become a proving ground for two fundamentally different views of evolution: natural selection versus intentional adaptation. And Maya Chen found herself at the center of a conflict that would determine how the galaxy viewed human potential. As she prepared for her final training sessions, Maya remembered something her first zero-gravity instructor had told her. The most dangerous opponent isn't the one who fears your strength. It's the one who fears your potential to grow stronger. The true test would come not in the games themselves, but in showing the galaxy that human adaptability wasn't a threat to the natural order. It was the next step in understanding how different species could evolve together. The Nova Games. The Nova Games opened with a display of light and energy that made the Academy's crystalline spires dance with rainbow refractions. Athletes from across the galaxy gathered in the grand arena. Their diverse forms a testament to the countless paths evolution had taken across the stars. Maya Chen stood among them, her simple human form drawing curious glances from spectators who had heard rumors of her capabilities. High above the arena floor, Administrator Lethna's tendrils pulsed with concern as she reviewed security feeds with Director Varix. We've identified the source of the recent sabotage attempts. Senior Instructor Krevax has been accessing restricted systems, apparently driven by some extreme theories about evolutionary purity. Can we delay the games? Varix's mandibles clicked with worry. It's too late, Lethna responded, and perhaps unnecessary. Look there. Below, Maya was surrounded by a diverse group of athletes. Angstera's crystalline form shimmering with competitive energy, Zinra's wing membranes displaying patterns of scientific excitement, and several others who had trained with her over the past weeks. They weren't just competitors. They had become something new. Collaborators in pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The first event was the Stellar Marathon, a grueling course through rapidly changing environmental conditions. As athletes took their positions, Maya noticed subtle irregularities in the environmental control systems. Someone had modified the course to be particularly challenging for human physiology. They still think this is about physical limits, Maya murmured to Zinra, who had noticed the same anomalies. Show them what adaptation really means, the Meridian researcher replied, her wing membranes flickering with encouragement. The signal sounded, and the arena erupted into controlled chaos. Athletes moved through zones of crushing gravity, solar plasma simulation, and quantum uncertainty fields. Maya's movements were precise and measured, each step demonstrating not just human capability, but human understanding. From the observation deck, Krevax watched with growing agitation as Maya not only survived his modified course, but began helping other athletes navigate particularly challenging sections. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The next event was the adaptive relay, where teams of mixed species had to coordinate their unique abilities to overcome complex obstacles. Maya and her partners, including a now openly cooperative Angstara, moved with synchronized precision that drew gasps from the crowd. Impossible, Krevax muttered, his tentacles writhing with frustration. They're exceeding the natural limits of their species. That's precisely the point, came Zinra's voice behind him. There's nothing natural about limits. They exist to be understood and overcome. The games continued through several more events, each one showcasing not just individual talent, but the power of combining different evolutionary advantages. Maya's human adaptability complemented Angstera's crystalline resilience, while Zinra's analytical insights helped them all optimize their performance. But it was during the final event, the new Adaptive Cooperation Challenge, that Krevax made his move. The environmental systems suddenly went into full lockdown, creating conditions that should have been lethal for most species. This is what happens when we ignore evolutionary law, Krevax's voice boomed through the arena. Each species has its natural place, its proper limits. These human methods are an aberration. Maya surveyed the chaos around her. Athletes were struggling against impossible conditions, their natural adaptations failing against the overwhelming force. But she saw something else too, opportunity. Everyone link up, she called out. Remember the training. This isn't about individual strength anymore. What followed was unlike anything the Academy had ever seen. Under Maya's guidance, athletes began working together in ways that transcended their species' limitations. Crystalline beings provided structural support for those with less physical resilience. Energy-based life forms helped regulate the environmental extremes. Quantum shifters created probability bubbles of stability. And at the center of it all, a human girl moved with the fluid grace of someone who had turned understanding into action. Maya didn't just survive Krevak's challenge. She turned it into a demonstration of everything humanity had learned about adaptation. You see limits as walls. Maya projected her voice to match Krevak's. We see them as windows. Every species here has something extraordinary to teach about overcoming challenges. That's not an aberration. It's evolution itself. The coordinated effort of the athletes began to overwhelm Krevak's sabotage. His modifications to the environmental systems, designed to prove the supremacy of natural limits, instead demonstrated the power of intentional adaptation. When security finally reached Krevak's position, they found him staring in disbelief at the scene below. Athletes who should have been incapacitated were not only surviving but excelling, their combined abilities creating something entirely new. The Nova Games ended not with a traditional victory ceremony, but with a demonstration. Maya and her fellow athletes showed the gathered crowd how different evolutionary paths could complement each other, how apparent limitations could become advantages when properly understood. This is what humans bring to the galaxy, Director Varix announced in the closing ceremony, his carapace displaying patterns of profound respect. Not just their own adaptability, but the understanding that evolution itself is about more than natural selection. It's about choosing to grow beyond our perceived limits. Maya stood with her fellow athletes, now friends and partners in pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Xterra's crystalline form displayed patterns of genuine admiration, while Zinra's wing membranes pulsed with the excitement of new scientific horizons to explore. What's next? Xterra asked, her usual competitive edge now tempered with curiosity. Maya smiled, looking out at the Academy's crystalline spires reflecting the light of three suns. We keep adapting. We keep learning. And most importantly, we keep showing the galaxy that the most powerful force in evolution isn't competition. It's cooperation. As the crowds began to disperse, Maya caught sight of a group of young students watching her with wonder. They were from different species, different evolutionary backgrounds, but they shared something new in their eyes. Understanding. They had seen firsthand that limitations were not endpoints but starting points, not barriers but invitations to innovate. The Nova Games had changed forever, just as humanity had changed the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. And somewhere on Earth, in that gravity well that had once been seen as a limitation, countless humans looked up at the stars with the same determination that had brought Maya Chen to this moment. The unwavering belief that every challenge was an opportunity to evolve, to adapt, and to grow stronger together.